Tagore Indian Cultural Center, Embassy of India, Mexico City. On behalf of the Embassy of India, Gurudev Tagore Indian Cultural Center, Mexico, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome Juhi Rai, the very young, energetic Charge d'Affaires, Embassy of India, Mexico City. Juhi ji, we are glad that you could be with us today. Muchísimas gracias. The Embassy of India, Mexico City, Gurudev Tagore Indian Cultural Center would like to accord a very warm welcome today, the third day of the conclave, to Dr. Krutivanti Srinivas Rao, Secretary, Sahitya Academy, Ministry of Culture, Government of India, Dr. Chinmay Guha, Professor of English, University of Kolkata, India, Dr. Gurunath Badigar, Associate Professor of English, Dharwad, Karnataka, India, who have all graciously consented to deliver the conclave address, event addresses at this third day of the 4 days mega conclave on who is an Indian after 75 years of independence. 2 steps forward, 1 glance backward. I can assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that we could not have asked for better luminaries than such scholars, researchers, and linguistic specialists to address us today at this momentous time in history of a nation as we celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav and India at 75. Welcome to you, esteemed guests and speakers of this day of the conclave. A great pleasure to welcome my colleagues from the embassy, the esteemed invitees from India, Mexico, Belize, educationists from universities and colleges of India, Mexico, and Belize, ICCR alumni, ICCR scholars, researchers, and lovers of Indian and Mexican culture and the Indian diaspora. India at 75 is an event which comes only once in a lifetime of a nation or an individual. As Indians, we are lucky to witness this milestone event, which attains a new dimension at this Embassy of India at Mexico and the Cultural Center by this culturally enabled scholars and performances. As the planetary science has shown over thousands of years that it is always once in a million moons that all planets conjure to fall in line and bring about a very positive impact on the affairs of the world. So too, the events from 2021 to 2023, as the Charge d'Affaires mentioned just now, are in link with like India at 75 and Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, all at a landmark turn of events and times. Without much ado, let me commence the events of the day by invoking the blessings of the Almighty through a prayer song by Piali Das from Colima, Mexico, a member of the Indian diaspora. This Sanskrit prayer, dedicated to Lord Krishna, has been subtitled in Spanish for the better comprehension of our Mexican friends. I request Mr. Ricardo Perez to play this video for us.
मधुरं वदनं मधुरं नयनं मधुरं हसितं मधुरम् अधरं मधुरं वदनं मधुरं नयनं मधुरं हसितं मधुरं हृदयं मधुरं गमनं मधुरं मधुराधिपथे अखिलं मधुरम् अधरं मधुरम् वचनं मधुरं चरितं मधुरं वसनं मधुरं वलितं मधुरं चलितं मधुरं भ्रमितं मधुरं मधुराधिपथे अखिलं मधुरम् अधरं मधुरं वदनं मधुरं नयनं मधुरं हसितं मधुरम् अधरं मधुरम् वेणुर्मधुरः वेणुर्मधुरः पाणिर्मधुरः पाडवमधुरः नृतं मधुरं सखं मधुरं मधुराधिपथे रखिलं मधुरम् अधरं मधुरं वदनं मधुरं नयनं मधुरं हसितं मधुरम् अधरं मधुरम् गीतं मधुरं पीठं मधुरं भूतं मधुरं सूतं मधुरं रूपं मधुरं तिलकं मधुरं मधुराधिपथे रखिलं मधुरम् अधरं मधुरं वदनं मधुरं नयनं मधुरं हसितं मधुरम् अधरं मधुरम्
Thank you, Piali, for this wonderful melodious rendition of the Krishna Stotram. After 75 years of India's independence, the definition of who is an Indian is passionately contested as ever. This contest is, among many other parameters, over economic opportunities, spiritual moorings, cultural recognition, philosophical outlooks, historical accommodation, pluralist improvisation, thereby giving the present generation of Indians the responsibilities of defining themselves in a new context within the ambit of acceptance of their inherited past. Who can be a model example of young India today than our charge d'affaires, Juhi Rai? I request Juhi Rai, CDA of the Embassy of India at Mexico, to accord a warm welcome to our esteemed invitees and guests at this conclave. Juhi ji, kindly do us this honor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Das. Namaste. Good morning, good evening, buenos dias, buenas tardes. Thank you so much, Dr. Das, for your kind words. And my warm welcome to Srinivas Rao sir, Chinmay sir, and Gurunath sir. It's a pleasure to see the three luminaries, although albeit we are seeing virtually. Hope to see all three of you physically sometime soon in future. Thank you so much, Dr. Das, for the kind introduction of the Young India. As I am being a part of your 3-day mega conclave organized by you with all your hard work and dedication, I can find some words to redefine being an Indian. And being an Indian, that is another responsibility, because we are representing 1.3 billion Indians. So the definition of Indian, the updated definition of Indians, or the redefined definition of Indians, is more important for us now more than ever. I represent a young India, but I do represent a mixture of India. Right now, I'm representing the amalgamation of India. It's a very special moment for me, being the charge d'affaires of the Indian Embassy at Mexico, when we are celebrating the 75 years of India's independence. And I'm leading a team here which is composed of more women in officers' rank than men. And this in itself is a pleasure for me, because many a times I've been asked this question, that how is India developing and how can they see the change in India, whereas they read in news that India is not that positive for women. And here we have the Charge d'Affaires is a woman, the director of the cultural center is a woman, and the second secretary, the second in command, is a woman. So there have been occasions when there are more women on the table than men, and this in itself is the best India I want to represent. Continue to represent, because we, the Indian women, or for that matter the women, we are the future. We have been neglected a lot in the past. The voices have not been heard, but just coming on the table and bringing a difference on the table, the start has begun. It's a long journey. Just four women in a setup of 20 is not enough, but we are there, we have started, and maybe I can see that India is setting an example, at least in its professional sphere, in schools, colleges, universities, government jobs, government offices and services, by including more women, by giving chances to women to study. And this is something which we have to study in deep, that how can we motivate our girls, the girls of this generation, to come forward and to achieve their dreams, because I love my country and I am looking forward to this mega conclave. The 2 days have been stupendously successful, and the other 2 days to listen that how can we include more ideas in our representation of India, in our representation of the country we are proud of, the country which is having rapid strides in development, economic development, spiritual development, philosophical development, and the personal development of the individuals. So there are many stories of India, there are many success stories of India, and I look forward to listen to those success stories and bring them on the table, bring them out in Mexico, a country which is as far as India, but culturally very near to India, and is very keen to know more about India, because the lack of awareness, we are living in a globalized world, and the lack of awareness about India in Mexico has costed them to base their perceptions on the basis of the Western media, which only reports negative or factual reporting of India. So there are many things which are to be brought out, and such kinds of events organized with all the hard work gave us an opportunity to bring out the success stories. And I really applaud the Gurudev Tagore Indian Cultural Center based in Mexico City under the stellar leadership of Dr. Das to implement these ideas to bring India closer to Mexico. The idea behind this conclave is not to just give 3 days of speeches or 4 days of speeches. The idea is to bring India sometime closer to Mexico, and in all to entire Latin America, because the distance might be a lot, but the distance between our brains, the distance between our souls is not that much, which cannot be covered by good efforts put in the direction. So without taking much of the time of the esteemed speakers here who are experts in their subject matter, we as diplomats, we rarely get time to be experts. We are more of jack of all trades but master of none. So I invite all three of you to this conclave, and I look forward to hearing from you. And I invite the audience and thank the audience to take out their time on a bright morning in Mexico and all over Mexico, and so please do listen to the esteemed speakers. Thank you all for joining us. Welcome and bienvenidos. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Charge d'Affaires of Embassy of India at Mexico, the young, energetic Juhi Rai. Who could be a better spokesperson than you? You always make us proud. Such young age, such a young diplomat. India is really proud of you, Juhi Rai, to be representing her 1.3 billion in Mexico. Thank you once again for addressing this eminent panel. The historical Indian, the cultural Indian, the spiritual Indian, the philosophical Indian. In the ambit of these four dimensions, where do we fit as Indians today? Have we moved on? Have we reoriented ourselves? How do we need to redefine ourselves? What is the image we need to project to the world at large? Is there much reorientation needed to formulate the concept of 21st century Indianism? Who is an Indian in the present global setup? What are the global expectations from an Indian today? Where do we position ourselves vis-a-vis the gender? Do we need to relocate Indian culture within the paradigm of a new technical age adjustment and requisites? Is there a need to rework the boundaries of individual and collective selves? Should we relocate ourselves? Should we need to rewrite diplomatic history? Though it is not possible to bury the trails of our past, the passage through the historical journey, is the time right now to insert ourselves in the universal history? Is the time right to settle India's selfhood? Is India frozen? Is it at once old and new? So many questions. A panel of experts, and we are so thrilled at the third day of this mega conclave that we are going to have philosophical reorientation of being an Indian after 75 years of independence. We are indeed honored with the presence of Dr. Srinivas Rao as our conclave speaker today. On behalf of the Embassy of India, Gurudev Tagore Indian Cultural Center, Mexico City, I would request him to address this third day of the mega conclave today. But before I invite Dr. Rao to the floor, I would like to introduce him, but much said about him is less. I would like to make a succinct introduction of Dr. Rao, who is a thinker, a scholar, literary expert, administrator with 3 decades of experience in several positions of literary management and administrations of national level literary institutions. Equipped with a master's and doctorate in English literature, Dr. Rao is a literary giant on his own. Dr. Rao is at present the Secretary of the Sahitya Academy, India's premier institution of letters, since February 2013. He has been serving the Sahitya Academy for more than 3 decades. That itself speaks for his scholarship. Dr. Rao has represented Sahitya Academy at many international platforms, including the General Assembly of Union Academics Internationale at Brussels, and has led literary exchange delegations to many countries across the globe. He has taken a team of highly evolved writers of repute for festivals of India abroad in many countries, including Feria de Libro at Guadalajara, Mexico in 2019, when I met him for the first time. Since then, Dr. Rao has left an indelible mark on my psyche. Sir, I am so proud to say that I know you and I know about your scholarship, and I had the good fortune of meeting you at Phil 219 when India was the guest of honor. Dr. Rao has himself presented scholarly papers at several prestigious international forums and conferences, academic institutions of repute, and literary seminars. A reputed author in his own right, he has penned myths, plays, and on Girish Karnad. A prolific writer, his forthcoming literary creations include extensive research on the prophecies of Brahman Garu and perceptions and perspectives, essays on Indian literature. He has translated a children's dictionary from English to Telugu. A regular face and speaker on Indian television and radio, Dr. Rao is the recipient of Telugu Academic Award in 2011 and many other citations too. He has been the jury member at countless literary awards committee and forums. Dr. K. Srinivas Rao is our most coveted conclave speaker of the third days of the conclave on philosophical reorientation, which we need to relook today to redefine who is an Indian from this point of view. Dr. Rao, we welcome you with a big round of applause and warmth. Sir, the floor
Yeah.
is yours, and we are eager to listen to you.
Thank you, Dr. Srimati Das ji, for very generous introduction. Miss Juhi Rai, the dynamic charge d'affaires of Embassy of India in Mexico City. Of course, Dr. Srimati Das, First Secretary and the Director of GTICC Mexico, uh, and my fellow panelists, Dr. Chinmay Guha and Dr. Gurunath Badigar, both are well-known scholars in India, and friends. I thank from the bottom of my heart the Charge d'Affaires and also Dr. Srimati Das and other senior officials at the Embassy of India in Mexico for posing this much faith in me to deliver this keynote address. I will try my level best to repay their faith, though I am not sure whether I am fully qualified for this task. The task before me is vast and the time is limited. There have been diverse streams of consciousness and thoughts in this direction before, and many inconclusive as well. So, all I can say is I will try and not out of any assumed humility. The topic given to me is who is an Indian? Philosophical reorientation. Srimati Das ji has given a wonderful introduction to it. I will be presenting my impressions of philosophical aspects from the perspective of literature. It is a part of human existence that every person reflects, ponders over, and philosophizes on life and aspects of life from time to time. Whatever one's occupation is, or whatever one's position in society is, everyone has a philosophy of life or some component or aspect of life on one's own. Given that, one can safely conclude that every literary piece is just an expression of author's philosophy on the given subject, whether it is a novel or a poem or a short story or a play or a criticism. In the early periods of time, ordinary Indian did not have the awareness of India as a country or oneself as Indian, even though different scriptures and literature in different languages carried a concept of India. The identity and idea which every Indian carried during the medieval ages and during the advent of modern times was an identity and idea of one belonging to a particular kingdom or community, as India was under the thumb of alien rulers for many centuries, and then alien rulers did nothing but to perpetuate such ideas to their advantage. So, when the country got independence in 1947 and all the presidencies, provinces, and small kingdoms were brought together as one nation, every person was proud to assume the recovered identity of Indian due to extended independence movement. That pride was also accompanied with hesitancy and uncertainties of different kinds. It is nothing but inevitable that people in independent India started pondering, reflecting, and philosophizing about this identity, even as the psychological effects of alienation and suffering due to bloody partition filled their lives. For the masses, it was not a complex problem, and one can easily define that whoever is born within the geographical boundary of India is an Indian. Though much truth in such attempts by majority and the rules in early days to provide passports and documents were pretty much in the same category of thought, it is too simplistic and naive to settle there once for all. Or India is a host to multitude of cultures, languages, language families, literary traditions, etc. And there may be people who may not fall within the definition able by geography, and further complex questions are bound to arise from therein. Further, scriptures in different Indian languages were pointing out to a much larger umbrella of near cosmopolitanism with dictums like Vasudeva Kutumbakam. So in 60s and 70s, we had a group of philosophers trying to figure out what is Indian philosophy. Is there a philosophy underlying various cultures, linguistic and literary traditions, and religions of the country? Carl H. Potter, Daya Krishna, R. Balasubramanian, S. S. Barlinge, Shivajaban Bhattacharya, and T. N. Ganapati, to name a few, went deep into this question of Indianness of Indian philosophy. Each went in different directions in their pursuit for truth about Indianness and arrived at different conclusions, barring Ganapati, who empathetically concluded that it is letting the fly out of the fly bottle is the common denominator of all philosophies underlying Indian culture, not some abstract ideas of heaven and hell or a soul by different names of Atma, Jiva, etc., or a god with thousand manifestations, but the aspirations of every individual, irrespective of religious conviction, is to end the miserable cycle of birth and death. Even the cultures which did not believe in the naive Vedic regions of the country fall under this umbrella. At one shot, Ganapati brought everything that can be termed as Indian culture, though varied, under this aspiration. This inquiry helped to a great extent when literary critics started reflecting on the common denominators which form the foundation for the literatures that can be clubbed under Indian literature. Dr. Sarvepal Radhakrishnan, who happens to be a president of Sahitya Academy, to which I represent, and also the president of India, of course, famously remarked that Indian literature is one, though written in many languages, since who or what is Indian has always remained a matter of contention, the term Indian literature becomes even more difficult to define and understand. Literature in India is as old as its paintings or its sculpture. So, given its ancient nature and thoughts through various traditions and schools, they must have come to understand or define some kind of common denominator uniting all the literature emanating from so many languages and cultures to be termed as Indian literature. I'm not going into polemics and politics of nomenclatures and philosophical antinomies, to borrow a term from Immanuel Kant, that have been so many. What is the use of literature if it is not useful to people or society, given the fact that literature, all literature, reflects reality, physical reality of the times in which they are composed, and psychological reality of a group of people in society, and the latter includes unwritten codes, including moral principles derived over several centuries? That is a question. Literature, when produced in a single language, say in Spanish or English, will not be accepted or understood or received the same way in one country as in another, like Spanish in Latin America or Spain or England or United States of America. That is where the culture and literature of India is emerging. The landscape, culture, food, languages, and literature of one region is vastly different from another. That being the case, the amazement part comes when there is no contradiction or inability to understand happens in all regions. Forget adults, children in Kashmir easily understand the Malayalam story, or children in Tamil Nadu understand the stories from Uttar Pradesh, or children in Gujarat understand the stories from Odisha, and so on. For the literature in all the languages carry and target the universal elements, common denominators found in all the cultures and regions of India, whether one practices Hindu or Christian or Islam or Jain or Sikh or Buddhist faith, or one is an atheist. These universal elements filled literature found in all the Indian languages make Indian literature a truly universal literature. From outside, this will not be visible. Unlike in the spheres of economy and polity, the warring supporters of global and Indian sensibilities are not at loggerheads with each other in the literary sphere. This is primarily because there has been work, at least since India came into contact with the European literary ideology, a strong perception that the literary experience is perhaps universal in significance. This is what Goethe called as uh, wealthy literature and Tagore called as Vishwa Sahitya, both meaning world literature. So, what all these philosophical pointers from Indian literature take us as far as who is Indian is concerned? That is a question. Regional determinism is perfectly okay for documentary purpose. None of the other categories or demarcations should be valid as answers to that question. Hindi or Marathi or Kashmiri or Bengali or Tamil or Assamese or Telugu as one's mother tongue should not be the criterion for determining someone as Indian. It may be a useful marker at best, but should not be determining or sole criterion. Anyone who has the universal mind and heart, willing to accept all as one, including those who have wronged us, or anyone from anywhere, having a mind and heart that can live up to the Vedic dictum of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, should be an Indian. If anyone wishes to identify oneself with such noble thoughts, world embracing culture, one should have a large enough heart and even mind to accept all, and then can call herself or himself or themselves as Indians. Such an understanding is also an antidote for massive bigotry, hatred, and violence that we are seeing across the globe and in all nations. The world needs, the human population on earth needs peace. Cooperation and friendship cannot come without peace inside the individual and collectively in community. This is my understanding, and that is what I have shared with you all today. Thank you all.
Your modesty, sir, is your scholarship. A scholarly talk which encapsulates the entire Indian philosophy in a nutshell, which is like filling the sea in a cup of water, which is impossible. And Dr. Rao, you have done so much of justice as a conclave speaker for the third day. Thank you very much, sir, for your
Thank you.
scholarly
Thank
talk.
you. Thank you.
And
Thank
I'm
you so much.
sure Mexico is going to gain a lot of information from your talk of today. Moving on, Dr. Chinmay Guha, a distinguished Bengali writer, translator, and a scholar of French language and literature. He started writing at an early age, and this set the stage for his future recognition as a writer of substance and repute. He has a publication repertoire of 29 books to his credit. At present, Dr. Guha is the professor of English at the University of Calcutta, the premier hub of intellectual point of reference in the Indian Intellectual Center of Learning. A noted intellectual, Dr. Chinmay Guha was formerly the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Rabindra Bharati University, Kolkata, and also Director of Publications, Embassy of France, New Delhi. He is the recipient of Sahitya Academy Award, Knight of the National Order of Merit, conferred by the President of France, Knights of Arts and Letters, Knight of Academic Palms, Leela Ray Award by West Bengal Academy. I could not take a break because I thought there would be not be doing justice to the awards which was conferred upon Dr. Guha. An illustrious career, a man of letters, is our event speaker today. Dr. Guha, we are indeed privileged to welcome you to address the Mexican, Belizean, and Indian literary giants and the young students of these culturally rich countries. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Chinmay Guha, Professor of English at the University of Calcutta, India. Bienvenidos, Dr. Guha.
Yes, thank you very much. I begin by thanking, of course, Dr. Das, First Secretary and Director, Gurudev Tagore India Cultural Center, Embassy of India, Mexico City, and Miss Juhi Rai, Chargée d'Affaires, and Pierre Das, and Dr. K. Srinivas Rao, of course, Secretary, Sahitya Academy, extremely well-known and respected man, and Dr. Gurunath Badigar. Thank you for inviting me to this mega conclave, Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Who is an Indian? 75 years of independence. Chapter 3, Philosophical Reorientation. Very important, of course. As important as history and spirituality and sociology. And of course, as an Indian, I thank you for lighting this lamp, because every dialogue, every such conclave is the lighting of a lamp. As Confucius said, instead of casting the darkness, light a lamp. I hope lamps will be kindled everywhere. Now, amidst this agony of a ruthless virus, probably the worst in the history of civilization, thank you for lighting up this candle. 75 years. This offers us occasion for reflection, contemplation, meditation. It's very important. Dr. Rao gave us a very solid background of the country and the literary, especially the background of literature from in various languages. But my question, of course, that is a point of departure. The question is 75 years. Where do we stand after 75 years? 3/4 of a century. Have we ever looked at the mirror and measure our coordinates in the deep of heart's dark silence? Is India confined to 2,287,259 square kilometers only? Didn't Rabindranath say India is not a country but an idea? It could have become a blazing flame. Has it become one for the rest of the world? More than 50 of these 75 years belong to the 20th century, which, according to René Dumont, the ecologist and agronomist, was a century of massacres and disasters and wars. For the anthropologist Julio Caro Baroya, he was reminded of the terrible events humanity has lived through in the last century. For Gombrich, it was a catastrophe. The historian Ernest Gombrich, it was a catastrophe. For Yehudi Menuhin, the musician, 20th century raised the greatest hopes conceived by humanity and destroyed all illusions and ideals. Let's not forget 2 world wars and numerous others. And of course, in these 75 years, we had the assassination of the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. We started with patricide, by killing our father. And 2 of our prime ministers were assassinated. Statistics would show that the situation is, of course, much better in many ways. Old-timers would confess that, and the new generation too. But probably not as much as what it should have been. There's no room for complacency. I like very much the subtitle. 2 steps forward, 3 steps forward, 1 step, 2 steps forward, 1 look backward. Kothay alu, kothay ore alu, as Rabindranath said. Where is light? Tell me where is light. Here have we really become universal in the way Tagore wanted us to be? But because it was important for an Indian. It was an extension of a consciousness. Let's not forget that in his magnum opus, Gora, who was a very, I would say, conservative nationalist, realized at the end of the great novel that he was born of an Irish mother and Irish parents. And then immediately he realizes that he has fallen short of Indianness. Indianness is something else. As I told you, India is an idea. Never has the face of the globe and human life been so dramatically transformed as the era which began with globalization. Have we been able to connect with each other in the globalized age as we did maybe in the age which was not globalized, in the times of Romain Rolland, Rabindranath, Vasconcelos, and Pablo Neruda, and many others? Tagore was, very importantly, a great traveler, the most traveled poet in the world. He traveled almost everywhere, beginning from 1912. And even in his old age, 71, he accepted an invitation to Persia and then went to Sri Lanka outside the country. And he went, of course, to Japan and China and, of course, Europe and Latin America. Now, this is not only wanderlust. what is important to remember that in his case, he was, it was much more than that. He was trying, he wrote in a letter in 1932 when he's going out to Persia, he said, I want to know humanity. He was trying to open up the windows. It was not a fake travel. We are now enacting every day. It was so difficult those days, yet Romain Rolland and Tagore could open the doors of perception, the creation of the self, and the connection with the other. This is extremely important for all of us to remember that philosophy in India is very different from the Western philosophy. In Western philosophy, most of the time is theory, whoever it may be, even Schopenhauer. But in our country, who internalized Indian thought, but what is important is, in the case of Indian philosophers from the beginning, it is both charcha and charja. It is theory and practice. Let us not forget that apart from being a matchless worshipper of beauty, Tagore was involved with the practical problems of education and understood our loopholes better than almost anyone else in his time. He was involved in rural reconstruction. So he was doing both. A dreamer, a poet par excellence, and at the same time, who went through different phases and different spaces in his poetic life. At the same time, he was involved in enacting perhaps the most important educational experiment in the planet in the last 100 years. Have we been able to follow that? To open up the windows, to come closer to nature, to become less hypocritical. This is very, very important. He expressed anguish at the evils, about the evils of industrialization, like in great plays like Rokto Korobi and other plays and other works. We should look at the pivotal concept of Atma Shakti, Atma Shakti, literally one's own strength. The book came out in 1905. That is very important, and that has nothing to do with what we often say in the classroom and seminars and political speeches. It's a different paradigm of self-edification. Normally, Atma Shakti would have meant empowerment, which we use almost every day. But in Tagore's case, it's a different paradigm of self-edification, participation in the creative, larger life, which emanates from within, the oneness he talks about. When he talks about Vishwa Bharati, Vishwa in Bharat, Bharat in Vishwa, the world in a nest. Look at the way he opened up the windows and thought of just now. Dr. K. Srinivas Rao mentioned Vishwa Sahitya, which was, he followed the footsteps of Tagore, Goethe, of course, Weltliteratur. But what is important is that he was trying to understand humanity, because in those days it was not easy to travel, but he wanted to. And remember, this network is very important. For example, when he was talking to Romain Rolland, it was right after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. And when Rolland wrote to unknown Rabindranath Tagore, whose Gitanjali he had prescribed to his friends as the finest book of poems in the world, he said, Rabindranath answered, when my mind was steeped in the gloom of thought that the lesson of the late war had been lost, and that the people were trying to perpetuate the hatred, anger, and greed into the same organized menace for the world, which threatened themselves with disaster, your letter came and cheered me with its message of hope. Just imagine, your letter came, Apna Chithielo, and it cheered me with the message of hope. Just imagine the connection they thought of. Only connect, said E.M. Foster in Howard's End. Connecting is the most important thing, and that they did better than today's world of internet. Letters came, and you exchanged 46 letters, which I translated from French into English for the first time unbelievable in the history of mankind. But this is important. It's intercultural dialogue, this interface, this vibration that it's communicated. And it's very important to remember that Latin America played a very important role. Roland, when he was thinking of World Library, Weltbibliothek, World Library, which will publish the best books in the world. And he wanted to start with Gora, not with contemporary greats. Just imagine. I thought he would be post-colonial. He wanted to publish and translate himself, Gora, and publish it from his World Library. Just imagine. And he himself translated with his sister, Choturango. Then he thought great things were done in Mexico. This is extremely important to remember, that he admired Mexico, Latin America. And we all know that he was aware of what Vasconcelos was doing, 1881 to 1959. Jose Vasconcelos, the whole idea of spirituality. This Mexican revolutionary writer, thinker, educationist, and politician participated in the Mexican Revolution of 1910-20. He was the vice chancellor of Mexican National University and the Minister of Education from 1920 to 24. A great proponent of mass education and social consciousness, he prescribed Rabindranath Tagore as compulsory reading in school and university textbooks. When I was traveling from Paris to Amsterdam in a bus, the man who was sitting beside me was my friend from Mexico, Jose Luis Vera, a painter. He told me that, in every class he had text written by Rabindranath Tagore. He pronounced it that way, Rabindranath Tagore, and wondered if it is the same Tagore I was speaking of. And just this is the result of the great work done by Vasconcelos. When you light a lamp here, there's a reflection elsewhere. If Romarola was thinking of making a community of great consciences. The biography of Romarola is called The Story of a Conscience by Alex Aronson. One Against All, William Starr. This man connected with Tagore, of all people, though his friends were though his friends were, just imagine, his friends were, Roland's friends were Sigmund Freud, Maxim Gorky, Albert Schweitzer, Albert Einstein. He exchanged 6 letters with Tolstoy, but he struck the same wavelength with Rabindranath and Gandhiji. Gandhiji for him was le dernier défenseur de l'humain, the last defender of human. And then look at the network. One light is reflected elsewhere. And the whole idea of spirituality was imbibed, and the predicament of the world, look at it, the fighters there. And Tagore, Roland was aware of it, and he wrote to Tagore about Vasconcelos, who I learned from Professor Shama Prasad Ganguly, the great Latin American scholar, that distributed 25,000 copies. And he published Sadhana, Crescent Moon, and Nationalism, published in 1916. And of course, we know 2 of his books are important from India's point of view, Estudios Hindostanicos and Philosophia Aesthetica. And this man thought of a new discourse called Rasa. And this is exactly what where in the world there are reflections, and there are others, and
Dr. Guha? His internet problem. We will wait for seconds. He will be back. There was some internet connection from his side.
Yes, he will log in again.
Yeah, he will log in again. I think so. The internet also has been so tranced by his talk, you know. And Dr. Rao, muchísimas gracias for introducing us to a scholar of the stature of Dr. Guha. We are really indebted to you.
And he is a wonderful speaker, no doubt.
Great.
He is a
Across
great
the
speaker.
plethora of the number of philosophers, the poets, the continents. What an exposition.
But that is what exactly our Ganguliji has written right now. Fascinating exposition in the comments.
Wonderful.
Our
Professor
Sham.
Ganguly has been with us on 2 occasions. Even till today, Mexicans want him back for a session solely dedicated to him. I hope I'll be able to do it soon. His talks are mesmerizing. My homage for his scholarship to Professor S.P. Ganguly.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Shall we play the video and we get him back again?
Yeah, I think we can start with our
Yeah.
Dr. Gurunath Badigar. No, in the meantime, if he joins, he will continue his lecture.
We have a video to play now, where it has been specially crafted by the GTICC. I think so. We will play it, and then we will get back Dr. Chinmay Guha, because the session has to end by him telling us, "This is it. Next time I will be back." With the permission of the panelists here, Dr. Rao, a senior scholar from India, Dr. Gurunath Badigar, a budding scholar from Karnataka. We have now a video, Sublime Rhapsody, a presentation by the director, staff, teacher, amateur students of Gurudev Tagore Indian Cultural Center. We were much encouraged while making this video by His Excellency, the former Ambassador of India to Mexico, Shri Manpreet Voraji. It is our lockdown 2020 creativity to the fore. There cannot be a better forum than this today to re-showcase that there is no lockdown for creativity for Gurudev Tagore Indian Cultural Center, Mexico City. We have juxtaposed Gurudev Tagore's songs of Ritu, seasons, the poems of Octavio Paz, the literary star from Mexico, Latin America, and the violin strains from Vivaldi's Four Seasons. A grand mix of three cultures, three nations, three artists, par excellence, and one platform, Gurudev Tagore Indian Cultural Center, Mexico. The teacher and Mexican amateur students of this center are rendering Tagore's Rabindra Sangeet in Spanish and Bengali. Philosophies, literature, music, culture transcends all boundaries and geographical landmass. The one who internalizes this is the true global citizen today. More so, an Indian who has this global reach after 75 years of independence. We will play the video after we continue with Dr. Guha. We welcome you, sir. We cannot leave you to go scot-free just because the internet played truant. Please continue, sir. We
Okay,
continue with
I
the
apologize with both hands to everyone, Dr. Das, Dr. K. Srinivas Rao, and Dr. Badigar, and all others. I'm sorry for that. It interrupted my flow, but here it is. So I was talking about Vasconcelos, and of course there was somebody else who was equally important and we must remember him today. Vasconcelos, of course, played a very important role. He was looking of a new humanity. Latin and not and can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
doctor. Yes, Dr.
Yeah, I'm
Guha.
using my mobile phone. I'm sorry this time. Now, apart from Vasconcelos, there was a great contribution by Raúl de la Torre. De la Torre, who was an anti-imperialist political thinker, creator of Aprista party in Peru, and had immense repercussion in other parts of South America, Tagore. And I was talking about Gonzalez's translation of Kabir. This is very important, because spirituality is also a very important part of Tagore's impact, and we can't sort of wish it away. And let us remember that this is not something very simple. When Octavio Paz admired Tagore as a painter and thought that he was doing things which are remarkable with the brush. And let us not forget that Victoria Ocampo thought that our restless, tormented West and the Bengali thinker who not only stands for the East, but is like a bridge in the making between East and West. And he was being quoted by Bertrand Russell in the philosophy of pacifism, when the mind is without fear. And they were all admiring Tagore's passion for undivided humanity of the world. So what Dr. Rao said is extremely important. It set off, I would say, in motion the debate that whether India could really psychologically, spiritually traverse the space and enliven the universe, which Roland anticipated, and whether India could open the doors of perception. Of course it did. But at the same time, the edification, was it complete? Because were they really able to do what Tagore wanted? Now, Tagore's wanting is not important. Important is Tagore was representing the eternal Indian philosophy of the Upanishads. Now, one question is very important. Vasconcelos, de la Torre, and Gonzalez, and Octavio Paz, all of them were interrogating modernity in a different way. This is extremely important. They were interrogating Western modernity. Western modernism was characterized by its fragmented narrative, discontinuous discourse, open form, etc., experimentation. But I think Vasconcelos and Tagore and Roland were trying to go deep inside into the heart's silence. And that is why it was a kind of alternative quest for an alternative discourse. And people said sometimes that Indians lacked theory. This is not true, because in our case, as Professor Ganguly had pointed out earlier on in a lecture, the theory in India is interwoven in the narrative, as it happened in Tagore's case. It's all inside. If you read Religion of Man, if you read Man, you will find that it's all interwoven inside. You can't find out the extraneous element. It's all interwoven, inextricably linked with each other. And this is what Roland was trying. So this is an experiment that they wanted to do, a great human experiment that we are incapable of in these days of globalization. And Octavio Paz, I don't know, rightly or wrongly, emphasized his paintings and thought that he was discovering a new world. And I think Tagore and the people like Vasconcelos and Jimenez, of course, one of the great translators of Tagore, and his lover and wife, Zenobia, in Latin America, they could understand the alternative modernism that they were thinking of. And they realized that it was what Tagore said at the Nobel Prize speech. Very few people know the Nobel Prize speech, which he gave on 26 May 1921. And there he emphasized the bonds of friendship and love. He emphasized the undivided humanity of the world. And Roland said in a letter to Kalidas Nag, the historian, that India can light up, India can get its fuel from other parts of the world, like Latin America. He emphasized that. And especially vis-a-vis the English colonialism. And he said India lost much. And so it could have been beautiful. It would have been a beautiful possibility. And remember that Gandhiji also thought of a different world. We all know that Roland was the first biographer of Gandhiji, and Gandhiji was one of the last defenders of humanity, highlighting the dignity and strength of each one of us. So, have we been able to fulfill the promises? We have, and we haven't. But the fight goes on. Present India is on the verge of is in a crossroad now. Now it's time to apply ourselves and think. Is there a hidden impact of theosophy? Has India been able to rethink what happened in Latin America, for example? Rasa Cosmica. Will it help us in the rediscovery of man, which they wanted? This is very important, the real Indian mind. Montaigne said, philosopher, c'est douter. To philosophize is to doubt. But for these great Indians and Mexicans, other Latin Americans like Jimenez, 4 Nobel laureates were involved. Romain Rolland, Rabindranath Tagore, Jimenez later on, and André Gide, the translator in French. Now, just imagine, this is extremely important. And of course, Pablo Neruda, we know, responded to Tagore in a meaningful way. And there was a controversy whether he plagiarized from Gitanjali poem number 16 in one of his major love poems. And we don't know whether it was an influence or an impact or a resonance, but there is no doubt that this happened. And Chilean poet Gabriela Mistral, who was Neruda's teacher, was also one of the great lovers of India and Tagore. The knowledge of a spiritual experience they thought would transform completely people. And Mistral was deeply influenced by the fact, as Professor Ganguly reminded us in a lecture, that Tagore happened to be that rare poet who wields knowledge of all sciences and yet sings like a shepherd. We really want to begin again, time to think and ponder and meditate. We can always begin afresh. Are we still able to construct a discourse like Sabines and Pass and others wanted? And as Philippe Soupeau said, the great French surrealist, anyone who denies any influence of Rabindranath's thought is lying, is a liar, c'est un menteur. So Rabindranath did percolate down. Rabindranath is there. I'm not talking about Tagore's vision as such, because it is the Indian vision of Indian philosophy of oneness, which came from the Upanishads, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishads, for example. The self and the other, Choto Ami or Boro Ami, theory built within the narrative, within the poems. And look at the bondings. There would be bifurcations, but yet the inner connection is ablaze like a flame. I think, philosophically speaking, we should once again stand before the mirror and have a strong look at ourselves. Have we evolved? Have we been able to illuminate our soul and connect with others? Has the meaning of
relationships, human relationships in this age of globalization become significant? Is it luminous enough? Yes, the quest goes on the 75th year. Thank you very much.
Let me give you a standing ovation, Dr. Guha. Speaking anything after your talk is taking away the aura from. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's play a very amateurish video made by Gurudev Tagore Indian Cultural Center, where we bring a grand mix of three cultures, three nations, three artists par excellence, and one platform, Gurudev Tagore Indian Cultural Center, Mexico. Rabindranath Sangeet in Spanish and Bengali. Music, violin of Vivaldi, and Octavio Paz's poems on season. Here is a presentation to you, ladies and gentlemen, by GTICC Mexico. Mr. Ricardo Perez, kindly play the video for us.
Sublime Rhapsody. For countless generations, authors, poets, and musicians have tried to capture the raw feeling that rain brings along with it. Let's get into the mood for this perfect season, and the rains bring with it the promise of all things new and full of emotions. The overwhelming calm that accompanies a storm, or the sound of the wind whistling in the trees right before rainfall, is nature at her best. Vivaldi's violin plays the fierce north wind, the ensuing storm with vigorous downpour, as if there is no tomorrow. Tagore says of monsoon, sky saturated with the deep blue shade of cloud as kajal. Oh, the extreme, oh, the extreme. Air filled with rain, song in a cloud roaring cadence. The surface fields with winning flags of newborn saplings. Oh, the extreme, oh, the extreme. Let's hear Octavio Paz, who compels us to listen to me as one listens to the rain, not attentive, not distracted, light footsteps, thin drizzle, water that is air, air that is time. The day is still leaving, the night is yet to arrive. Autumn. It captures the season of striking change, a metaphor to explore the cycle of life. Watching the trees turn from a uniform green to all varieties of gold, yellow, and red is a spectacular experience. One can almost be blinded by the fiery brilliance. How can it be that all this beauty is sign of death and decay? With all this beauty, there is a certain sadness in knowing that the changing colors foreshadow the arrival of long, cold winter. Vivaldi's composition of the cool blessings of autumn, replacing the wetness of monsoon. Vivaldi's restless music of monsoon fades away into peaceful melodies to a nice, pleasant nap. Tagore draws our attention to autumn and says, "Oh, look how the Shuktara looks forward, with the onset of dawn, singing for someone unknown. Wake up, my dear, wake up." Vibrations run across the sky. Paz is in a reminiscent mood when he says of autumn, "The wind awakes, sweeps the thoughts from my forehead and suspends me. In the light that smiles for no one, so much of beauty there. Autumn, between your cold hands and the world blazes. And the world really does blaze with colors on a bright, crisp autumn day, does it not?" Spring, a miraculous experience. O spring, you are the king of seasons, the Ritu Raja. With buds on the trees and lighter evenings comes a new spirit of optimism. From Shakespeare to Wordsworth to Tagore to Paz, poets have always been inspired by the season of new beginnings. Nothing is more beautiful as spring. Spring gives us hope for rejuvenation in our own lives as well. Spring is a time to renew the excitement and zest for life that lives in sight. Vivaldi uses 3 movements in the spring music: quick, slow, quick. The violin mimics the sounds of chirping birds and the babbling brooks. His orchestra presents an upbeat melody as well as the sounds of joyous gatherings of people. Tagore is as carefree as the colors of nature. He says, "I give way to the wind flow, my soul, carefree and untamed. Colors of my happiness, for no apparent cause. With your swaying fur, it murmurs songs of my melancholy nights. Luminance of your moon dissolves all my sorrows and joy away." Let's hear what Paz says about spring. The winter has been long and cold. Where are the cracks that you can hold? Widen in yourself to let the spring in. You belong in the sunlight for all to behold. I forget my name, and the name of my birthplace, and the name of my race. After judging, sentencing myself to perpetual waiting, to humid, tender, insistent onset of spring.
El alma entregó al vendaval, luz primaveral. El alma entregó al vendaval, luz primaveral. Al viento entregó por convicción mi alma desesperada. El alma entregó al vendaval, luz primaveral. El alma entregó al vendaval, luz primaveral. Flores Ashoka en botón comparten su felicidad. Flores Kishuka y Ashoka que me acompañan al andar. Flores Ashoka en botón comparten su felicidad. Flores Kishuka y Ashoka que me acompañan al andar. Con sus colores dicha secreta, con sus colores dicha secreta, no hay razón, solo alegría, el viento, dicha, dicha secreta, flores y vientos de primavera, no hay razón, solo su dicha, con sus colores, con su alegría, y mi triste canción se mece como un abeto y ennochece mi corazón. El alma entregó al vendaval, luz primavera, el alma entregó al vendaval, luz primavera, al viento entregó por convicción mi alma desesperada. El alma entregó al vendaval, luz primavera, el alma entregó al vendaval, luz primavera.
Imagine a world bereft of music, poetry, songs, stories, paintings. Imagine a world if all the books and all the music and all the paintings and all the art were to disappear overnight. Imagine a world where there is no nourishment for the soul. Imagine a world without the changing seasons. Imagine a world where there is cultural starvation. Every one of us have the right to experience culture as much as a right to food, shelter, education, and medical treatment. You may say I am a dreamer, but I am not the only one. I hope someday you will join us and the world will be as one. What better way to talk about humanism and universal brotherhood? Let's celebrate.
A humble effort by Gurudev Tagore Indian Cultural Center, bringing in Tagore, Paz, and Vivaldi. Moving over, Dr. Gurunath Badigar. He is an associate professor of English, serving at a first grade government college and postgraduate center at Dharwad, Karnataka. Dharwad, Hubli Dharwad, the twin cities, the quintessential literary towns, which breathe the air of literature and culture, and from where we have the maximum Gnanpith awardees in India. Also, the twin cities of Hubli Dharwad, which has the great doyens of Hindustani and Karnataki musicians like Gangubai Hangal, Savai Gandharva, Mallikarjun Mansoor, and such illustrious daughter and sons of India. Dr. Badigar is from such a place. He is a well-respected scholar at these twin cities and beyond. He has an MPhil and doctorate in English literature and a recognized teacher of English phonetics, using technology to disseminate the grasp over English language. A very regular attendee and presenter of scholarly papers in English language in particular, Dr. Gurunath has presented papers at more than 42 conferences nationally and internationally, and chaired many sessions on English language studies. He is also known much for conducting workshops on communication skills in English. Today, we shall be looking forward to hear Dr. Badigar speak on the Indians at this point of time in history, who are also very enabled with the power of language to communicate his thoughts and ideas, and which are always crowding the minds of 21st century Indians. With a big round of applause, I welcome my co professor, Dr. Gurunath Badigar, a highly respected professor from North Karnataka. Dr. Badigar, the floor is all yours.
Namaste, Mexico. Namaste, Bharat. A very good morning to all of you. I'm humbled by the introduction given by Dr. Srimati Das, the first secretary, director, Gurudev Tagore Indian Culture Center, who is in fact one of my great influences, inspirer, and my senior conclave speakers, Dr. K. Srinivas Rao, Professor Chinmay Guha, and all the members of GT, ICC, Mexico City, and the audience across the globe. In fact, more than my chance of speaking on this occasion, I have the pleasure of listening to all the conclave speakers here, because there has been a great discussion on philosophic reorientation. When it comes to my point of view on philosophic reorientation, as Madam was talking about India's stand on languages, culture, and various aspects, as a teacher, as an Indian, on this occasion of India celebrating Amrit Mahotsav, not an ordinary thing for a country like India, the biggest democracy in the world, the biggest surviving democracy with 1.3, billion people. It's not so easy to maintain democracy. It's all because of deep-rooted culture, wonderful philosophy of life, and the civilization that we belong to is responsible for such sustainable democracy. On this occasion, I just want to talk as an average Indian how the Indian philosophy is now the part and parcel of our life. I'm not going to talk about the Vedas, Upanishads, Jnana, Karma, rituals, Aranyakas, Vedanta, and all about various important religions which were originated from this land. It's all, in fact, the big, philosophy that shaped our minds. I remember still W. speaking about Spiritus Mundi. What we are talking today is all the language that we inherited, the knowledge that we inherited, the consciousness, what we are talking about is all the element of the past. And the past is guiding the present, and the present will guide us the future. That's why a glance backward and 2 steps ahead. So today we need to, in the present context where India stands, how Indian philosophy helps us to move ahead, and in what way India can also guide the world. We are talking about Vishwaguru. We have a dream to become Vishwaguru in 21st century. How India can become a country which can guide, which can help when the world sometimes is in trouble. This has been seen in the recent past when the pandemic affected the whole of the world. And what is India's response? What is Indian philosophy? Deaths happened everywhere. Suffering is seen everywhere. The way we look at life is something different. That's why India could withstand many troubles. Of course, we were not able to stop the inevitable, but the way we managed the situation is not just only the mechanism, but the minds that matter. That's why on this occasion, I just want to talk about some important aspects of our philosophic outlook that we are talking about is how we look at life. I am just going to tell you something about some important writers in Canada. When I listened to Professor Guha on Rabindranath Tagore, we have been reading Rabindranath Tagore in English, although we don't have the chance of reading in Bengali. In fact, we are the big, the readers of this great soul from Bengal. But when it comes to some writers, we have writers like Kuempu, as Madam was talking about, the land of musicians, the land of poets. We have Bendre, who were awarded Jnanapita Award for the outstanding poetry. I just want to I was just telling that how the Indian philosophy is not just in the great books, it is in everybody's home here. We have sadhus, we have santas, we have saints, we have local, including a farmer is also a philosopher. They have inherited the very idea of Indian philosophy from generation to generation. It is transmitted when it comes to way of life, when it comes to our everyday life, when it comes to understanding samsara, family, when it comes to our behavior with fellow beings, now we are talking about Vishwamanava. We are talking about honesty. We are talking about how to face trouble. We are talking about how to be grateful to the elders. These things have been, in fact, reminded and told in the form of folk tales, told in the form of, proverbs, maxims, statements, vachanas particularly. For your kind information, I wanted to tell you that Karnataka had seen such a great revolution, social revolution in 12th century. When I'm talking about social revolution, we remember the Sharana movement in Karnataka, in South India, when Lord Basaveshwara, Lord Basaveshwara, in fact, is one of the greatest leaders, reformers that Karnataka had seen. This Vachana literature in Kannada is, in fact, the great philosophy. All the Indian philosophy is summarized. The gist of Indian philosophy is summarized in short poems. I just give you one small vachana here. Kalabeda, kolabeda, husiya nudiyalo beda, tanna bannisabeda, idiru haliyalo beda. Ide antaranga shuddhi, ide bahiranga shuddhi. This is one of the important things in which we come to know the whole philosophy of life. Don't steal, don't kill, don't in fact, mock at others. Tanna banni sabada, don't praise yourself. We are talking about aham, we are talking about ego, we are talking about one's own. Tanna banni sabeda, don't praise yourself. This is what the message given. Ivanarava yannadiri, Ivanammava enniraya. Don't say that he is an outsider. Everyone is our friend. This is where we are talking about universal brotherhood, the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is beautifully explained in the Vachana literature. It's not just the men here. There were more than 33 Vachanakaras who belonged to women folk. That's what the greatness of 12th century South India. Akkamma, we are now celebrating Akka festival in America. We remember that kind of a great women intellectuals in 12th century, reformers. It means that what I just wanted to tell you, it's not just what the others wrote without knowing what is India, land of fakirs or land of sadhus and this and that. It's the spiritual India is not all the time understood. There is a need for, in fact, presenting the best of India to the world. On this occasion, we have to remember, we have series of Sufi, saints, both in Karnataka and India. We are talking about Kabi, we are talking about various Sufi Sharif in Karnataka. And we are talking about Dasa literature, whether it is Kanaka Dasa, Purandara Dasa, the great Dasa literature. When Kanak Dasa says, Kula 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 Vendu, he speaks about don't fight over the caste. Do you know the origin of the caste? Kula da neleyanenadru ballira. So here he is speaking about don't discriminate on the basis of caste, because whenever it comes to the caste, we know that India is under discussion. We have overcome it. We are overcoming it. This is what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar made it possible and wonderful constitution we have. What I mean to say, in 21st century, after 75 years of independence, how best we can carry forward the idea of Vishwamanava. Even Kuvempu, I'm talking about Kuvempu's famous poem, O Nanna Chetana, Aguni Anuketana, Manayanendu Kattadiru, Konayanendu Muttadiru. Kuvempu is the Tagore of Karnataka. We call him the Tagore of Karnataka. a great writer of repute. He speaks, don't stop. Oh, spirit, don't stop. Don't put a boundary. Don't be in a confined place. Manayanendu muttadiru, konayanendu. So, manayanendu kattadiru, konayanendu muttadiru. This is how Kuvempu is speaking about the limitlessness of Chaitanya, the spirit. I mean to say that this occasion, whenever we are talking about the materialism, globalization, consumerism, today we have been, of course, influenced by these factors. What Wordsworth says, the word is too much with us. Of late we lay waste our powers, getting and spending. This is, of course, this holds true today. Of course, materialism affected us. But in spite of all these things, an average Indian is philosophic. An average Indian has a tattva. An average Indian knows how to respect the parents, the importance of mother, the importance of parents, the importance of society, the importance of co-living, coexistence, even the loving. He loves the creatures, all the creatures around him. Even the political philosophy of India, what Mahatma Gandhi laid, the ahimsa, the very philosophy of ahimsa, the philosophy of satyagraha, model to the world. Satyagraha, what Gandhi said, is as old as the ancient hills, but he made it. The very idea of word, deed, and creed, the harmony between word, deed, and creed, these are the reminders. Gandhi walked on this earth in 20th century, not far long ago. He is our model. Vivekananda has been our model. He knows the power of the youth whenever he is talking about what is exactly the Indian, what is exactly the Hindu, what is exactly the idea of Bharat, the very idea of the life divine that we read from Aurobindo, the home and the word that we learn, the very concept of Muktadhara that we learn from Tagore. Tomara halashuru amara. This is, in fact, a wonderful philosophy. We learn from literature, we learn from common man, we learn from an ordinary person from every street of this country. That's why I say when it comes to philosophical reorientation, it is just again reorienting ourselves, reminding ourselves of the rich past of this country, the rich tradition that we have inherited, and 2 steps forward means how best we can, in the world of information technology, when we are all governed by machines, technology, how best we can continue our relationships, how best we can meditate on the problems of the present time, and how best we can, in fact, imbibe the best spirit possible, and how best we can guide others, because we inherit such a strong tradition of this country. There is possibility that if we maintain, if we remember to what kind of a culture we belong, we certainly can do something for ourselves, something for the world. And on this occasion of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, as a proud Indian, we know very well that Indian philosophy will help us, Indian historical background of tolerance, co-living, universal brotherhood, the whole world as a single family. It reminds us Bertrand Russell, it reminds us Arnold Toynbee, it reminds us Gandhi, Nehru, and all the great visionaries who wanted to see India as one of the important components of the world. We never wanted any kind of aggression. we always lived in harmony with all, not only countries, with all creatures. That's the philosophy that we have learned from our forefathers, and we will have to carry forward to the next generation and hope what Gurudev Tagore Indian Culture Center is doing is a wonderful job. In fact, I salute Dr. Srimati Das for having initiated such a dialogue and having invited such great scholars like Professor Rao, Professor Guha, and I have been listening, regular listener of GTICC. In fact, I feel myself blessed to be the part of this great conclave. I don't know what I have spoken, but I learned a lot from listening to others. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Badigar. I will just pick up the last sentence, what you said. This conclave was meant for me because I wanted to be exposed to scholars like Dr. Rao and Dr. Guha and the other speakers who will be coming tomorrow and who had come 2 days back. It is to enrich myself. I wanted to listen to them. Thank you so much. Muchísimas gracias. It has been wonderful talking to all the three panelists today. With this, we come to a conclusion. I would like to say, now is it the time for logical accommodation and acceptance. Now is the time for India to cut its own modern garb. As an Indian, a proud Indian, I believe, as I represent India in Mexico, we have the resilience and capacity to reason and to question why and how. India has her resilience to constantly encompass diverse ideas of what India is. Her history is itself expressive of the Indian idea. This 4 days of the conclave looks forward to arouse, the last day tomorrow, some implicit awareness suffused with sensibilities of our ideas and theories in philosophy, history, culture, spirituality, rising from India's ineffaceable past. We do have the capacity to move away a bit and have a relook at being an Indian. India at 75. Celebration from 2021 to 2023. Oh, what a glorious start with this 4 days conclave. I would like to thank Juhi Rai, Charge d'Affaires Embassy of India, Mexico City, for being with us. And thus, this does encourage us to do our best for our country, for our embassy, for this cultural center. Thank you, Juhi ji. My deep felt gratitude to Dr. Srinivas Rao, Dr. Guho, Dr. Gurunath, our esteemed speakers of repute, who have motivated us Indians today to deliver what we promised in the premise of philosophy and the kind of reorientation needed to fit into the rubric of India at 75 of our great nation. Thank you, esteemed speakers. I would like to thank my embassy colleagues who have been with us for their support and presence. Our esteemed invitees and friends from India, Mexico, Belize, and their presence at every event always brings a warm smile onto our face. Last, but it can never be the least. I, as the director of this Indian Cultural Center, could not have moved a single step unless I had my local technical team of Ricardo Perez, Gabriela Mora, Aaron Espinosa with me at GTICC. They ensure that we always have a glitch-free session. Thank you, amigos. It is true that teamwork is indeed dream work. And before I sign off, whenever we at GTICC project our future events, we cannot but recollect the famous lines, my favorite, from Robert Frost's iconic poem. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but we have promises to keep. Even as Indians, Miles to go before we sleep. Miles to go before we sleep. Gracias. Thank you. Viva India. Viva Mexico. Namaskar.
Thank you so much.
Namaskar and thank you so much.